You're listening to Fulfilling Career, Happy Life, the podcast for accomplished professionals who want to identify what's next in their career and make it happen without compromising what matters most. I'm your host, Randi Roberts, an executive and career life coach, and I'm glad you're here. If you want to feel more energized about your work again, this show is for you. So let's get into it. It's been really kind of interesting that I got comments from last week when we talked about making a difference, that it seemed like people really notice making a difference, or it's present for them when they don't have it. So I got a number of comments about that. I thought that was pretty interesting. And I think in a lot of ways, that's a theme for this week's challenge as well, or this week's pillar, I should say, which is challenge. One of the next pillars that we're doing from the career satisfaction assessment. Challenge is one of those things also that you really notice it when you don't have it. And one of the cool things for me, I shared with all of you that my theme for 2022 is that I want to be on purpose. And what I found was choosing the pillar we were going to cover last week, and announcing it to you made it very present for me all week. So chose challenge. I knew I had to put some thoughts together to share with you about challenge. We would be talking about it today. And it felt very purposeful for me. I was focusing on that, and challenge was showing up for me everywhere. Not only did I feel challenged in my own ways, and when I did, I was able to appreciate it, because it's like, okay, here the universe is giving me an example of something that I need to be surrounding myself with this week. But it came up, I think, in every client conversation I had this week too. So it felt very much on purpose to have selected it last week and to talk about it. So at the end of today's talk, we'll choose the one for next week, if for no other reason than because it's helpful for me. Okay, so challenge. What is it? When I was putting my thoughts together for you, I started thinking about, well, is it a verb? Is it a noun? And that may sound like a funny place to start, but my daughter's a writer. And so in our house, words are really important. And when you think about the verb in it, it's really about confronting something or defying something even. But the noun is around a stimulating task or some kind of a problem. And so I think what we mean by challenge here is almost a mix of the two. It's taking on something bigger than where you are, bigger than what you've done before, maybe even bigger than you can do. And so I think that's what we mean by challenge. And challenge exists on a spectrum. It's a spectrum from like a safe space where you're cozy, where you know that you can master your surroundings, all the way towards kind of crazy, like the kind of challenge that could be life-threatening. The thought of climbing Mount Everest or crossing the Atlantic in a hot air balloon is a little bit out of my comfort zone in terms of challenge, but that's essentially what the spectrum is. And so one of the keys is to know, where do you need to be? Like, what's your optimal zone on that spectrum of challenge? Do you need to be stretched to perform? Or is this a time when you want to and need to stay a little safer? Because that's not wrong. I mean, I'm here to advocate for taking challenge on, and that's what you're going to get from me. But there is a time to be safe. And if that's what you need, that's what you should do. There's not, every moment isn't a time to stretch yourself and really push your edge, if you will. One of the things that I know about myself is that challenge is really important to me. It's like air. It's the air I breathe. And, those of you who know me or know my background, that I was in pharmaceuticals for many years, had a great, very successful, very satisfying career in pharmaceuticals. And then for a variety of reasons that it was time for me to make a change. I mean, career-wise, in terms of my own personal mission, but also I have some chronic health issues that I deal with, and I needed a different pace, and I needed to be a little bit more in control of things for myself. But I was actually really worried what was going to happen when I stepped out of that and no longer had um, this challenge, this healthy stress, the thing that I had identified with for so long. And I was concerned that if I got bored, I was going to jump at the wrong job. I knew I had a next chapter in me. I knew there was something else, but I was really worried that if I got bored, I was going to jump at the wrong job. So the answer for me to stay engaged while I figured out what that next chapter was just to start a company, which was a consulting company. I did similar work to what I had done before in different ways. And then one of my clients hired me. So, not only was it the right solution in the interim, but it turned into a good solution longer term. So the point was, I knew that I needed challenge, and I created that situation for myself. But sometimes challenge can go to the extreme, and it can feel like maybe we're not set up for success because we're taking on something, either we take it on or it's gifted to us maybe, and we may not feel that we're set for success. But it brings to mind a client that I had. This was a couple of years ago, and he was starting a new job, and some of the work we were doing together was around his career transition and helping him get established and set for success in the job, in this new job. And his aspiration was maybe 2-3 years down the road to move up to the next level. So he's starting in the new job, feeling a little overwhelmed, as many of us are when we're taking on something new. And not long after he started, his boss left the company. So he was actually asked to take on many of the boss's responsibilities while they did the search. So here this guy's in a situation where he already feels like he's stretching, and then he's sort of thrown into the deep end. So he was convinced he couldn't do it. He's completely overwhelmed and getting all in his own head about it. And the result was he figured it out. And he ended up not only succeeding, but he ended up at that level a couple of years prior to what he thought he would be in. Now, he was in a great situation because the support around him, the leadership of the company and his peers were very sort of kind about it, and supportive. And he and I were working together, which was help. So he had the support he needed during that time to take on that stretch. And it turned out it wasn't too much for him. It wasn't too big for him. It just felt like it was too big for him. So by putting the resources together and sort of being forced into it, he realized he could do more than he could. And the next time he took on a big challenge, he had a very different mindset around it. So how do you know where you want to be on that spectrum from super safe to kind of crazy? A good way to figure it out is to think about a time when you were on fire in your career. You were lit up. You were, all systems were going. Maybe you feel that way now, which would be wonderful, but hopefully you have felt that way at some point. And think about that time. Go back to that time and think about where were you on that challenge spectrum? That time that you were saying, thank God it's Monday. Where were you on that challenge spectrum? Were you getting enough of it? At what level? Did it feel like maybe you felt like that client of mine that it felt like it was too much and he found a way to do it? Maybe that's part of what lit you up. So if you can think back to that time, it'll really help you identify where do you fall on that spectrum. And something to keep in mind is pacing is important too. My own coach used the analogy the other day that made so much sense to me of the inchworm. The inchworm stretches and gets where it's going, and then it contracts and it recovers. And so that's an important thing too. We can't be stretched to the limit at all times. So challenge kind of, your need for it may change over time. It's just important to match your situation to that need. So, as I said, I'm seeing challenge everywhere this week. A client that I saw just today was talking about seeking a new job. And part of the reason she was looking was she's not as challenged in the ways she wants to be. She's super busy and she's really stressed and she's got a lot on her plate, but she's not deeply challenged. So she's looking for something else. And the job that she's looking at and that she's finding herself really drawn to, the whole reason is because the challenge is so big. And she does not know how she's going to do it, but she knows she can do it because she knows she's resourceful and she can put the support around her that she needs. And so it's kind of scary, but that scary is important. It's part of pushing your edge. It's part of knowing where you're growing. And that's what she needs. And the truth is that some of the most rewarding times we have are when we take on a challenge that seems so big, we're convinced there's no way to succeed. Have you been in that time where you're up in your own head? You're mentally updating your resume because you're convinced you're done. You can't do it. And then you find a way. You find a new resource around you. You learn information you didn't have before. You get to flex a new muscle and you got it done. And the feeling there is tremendous. And, the confidence that it builds and the awareness of your own resilience will enable you to take on the big challenge next time in a different way. You still might need that scary. So you still might need to go big, but there'll be more of a confidence in yourself that you can do it. And the truth is, that's what keeps things engaging and that's what keeps things interesting. And it makes the payoff so much sweeter when you really have to work for it. The easy things are great, but it's the hard things that teach us the lessons and that we really appreciate. And it's just, you got to take it on. So I am here to advocate for taking it on. Challenge yourself to the level that you need and maybe even a little bit more. It is uncomfortable and sometimes it's scary. And sometimes it can even feel painful in the moment. So give it some meaning. If you're going to go through that discomfort, give it some meaning. Think about what's the promise in it for you. What's on the other end? Why is it worth it? And then if you choose to take it on, you might choose not to. Choice is in your hands. But if you choose to take it on, be really purposeful about that choice, knowing what you think is in it for you on the other side so that you can just really squeeze every bit of juice out of the experience and the learning. Something that I find really helpful with clients too is to ask yourself, what will be different in your work and even in your life if you're challenged the way you want to be? And sometimes that can open up new possibilities and really lead you in new directions. And then the question a lot of times people will have is, okay, so I'm not challenged, I'm kind of bored. And a lot of clients come to me with these kinds of things. They know what it's like to feel on fire and they just don't have it right now. So, what can you do to get it back if you're missing it? And there's different things, different approaches. It's personal. It depends on your situation. If you're with a big company, it might be asking to take on a new project, asking for more responsibility or even a different role. Sometimes when you're with a big company, or certainly if you have your own company, you could think about different product lines, different revenue streams, different ways to grow the business and flex your own skills. And if you can create a situation where it's good for the business and it's good for you, that's an easy sell. My clients will hear me say that all the time. Okay, let's look at this through the lens of what's good for the business. It makes the sell super easy. Sometimes it's starting up a side business, some kind of a side hustle, or getting involved in a cause that's bigger than yourself. That might bring in the challenge. If you're not feeling challenged enough on your job, but it's meeting your other needs, then maybe you need to find the challenge somewhere else and get involved in something that will fuel you, that's outside of the job. Sometimes it is about making a career change. It really depends on what your runway is, how much longer you want to be working, what your goals are. And it's very personal, but go for it. just put the support around you need to make sure you succeed during that time. So those are my thoughts for the week on challenge. I'd love to know what you have to say, what it means to you, whether it's important. Let me know in the chat now or during the week, and we can talk more about challenge. So where are we going next week? If you feel free to download the assessment if you haven't already. The link is in the chat. Next week, the pillar that we'll be talking about is leadership. So that's something that, I, based on my experience this week of seeing challenge everywhere in a really wonderful way, I'm going to try and be focused on leadership that way, and examples that I see that are really powerful, examples that maybe I need to learn from that aren't as positive as we want them to be. Those are good teachers too. And then how we're exerting leadership ourselves. And then one other quick announcement for this week is I have a new group coaching program starting up in March. I'm forming a new group. That will be a small community of people who are all facing similar kinds of challenges, maybe questions about where they are in their career and what should their goal be. Does their goal still fit? Those kinds of things. There is real power in talking with a small community about those things and working through similar issues together. So if that's something that you're interested in, feel free to drop a note in the chat or send me a message, and myself or somebody from my team will reach out to you and get you the information that you might need to see if it's right for you. So anyway, that's the announcements for the week. I look forward to seeing you next week when we'll talk about leadership, and wishing you all a wonderful week. Thanks so much for listening to Fulfilling Career, Happy Life. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe, follow, rate, and review. Do all the things to show your support for this podcast. It helps other professionals who want to feel more energized about their work again find us. And if you want to take this thinking further, please follow me on LinkedIn, where I share content on a regular basis. You can also get on my email list by downloading the Career Satisfaction Assessment or through my website. All these links are in the show notes. Thanks again for tuning in. I truly appreciate that you make the time for yourself to listen to the show. See you next week.